Mitch from Hard Intentions YouTube channel. We also have hardintentions.com, which is our website where we sell, merchandise and hats, shirts, artwork, stuff like that. So check us out. We also have our Teespring account down below here. You can see some of the stuff we have, hoodies and whatnot. We have some cool gear, so get a chance, please check that out. We appreciate the support, and we think you might like some of our gear. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I wanted to do a video about PTSD. A lot of people just know about PTSD from soldiers, that go to war, and they come back and they have a hard time adjusting. They have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not just soldiers who suffer from PTSD. As far as prisoners go, especially long-term prisoners, you grow up. A lot of guys grow up in homes with violence in the home, especially like if you have a father or a parent who's violent. As a kid, I think violence is not, violence as a way to solve your problems is not it's a learned behavior. It's not something that just comes natural with kids. Most people who grow up, most kids are just, they just want to have a good time. Go out, go out and play with their friends and have a good time. And then, like in my case, I come home, I have a stepdad in the house, he's violent. I experience, violence in the home towards me, towards my mother, from a guy that I know is not my dad. It creates PTSD for kids, whether they realize it or not. And it also starts shaping your core beliefs. Your cognitive functions, the way you think, the way you analyze things, how your brain sees things, start taking shape at an early age, and so when you start experiencing violence in a home, a lot of times you take it out to the streets, you take it to school, you take it to the neighborhood. In a lot of cases, you start running into kids who are experiencing the same thing in their homes. So the violence becomes part of your daily function. Excuse me. And you don't realize, because you're a kid, that, hey, this isn't normal. But, and then the trouble I got into as a kid was mostly violence. I beat up some of my school teachers. I beat up people in school. I used to beat up bullies. I was a fuck up. And people would just look at me as a kid and go, yeah, he's a fuck up, he's a violent fuck up. They don't try to get into the why of it, why is this kid violent? I mean, when you're 11, 12, 13 years old, it's not normal to fight all the time and fuck people up and jump on guys older than you and bigger than you, and hurt people. It's something you learn in the home, and so in my case, that behavior led me to youth authority, where, I experienced even more violence. I experienced gang violence. I got exposed to gang activity, gangs from LA and different barrios from around where I was from, and actually get exposed to people from all over the state. And so now you're exposed to gang violence and, racial violence, And you also get experienced. I also got exposed to, the us against them kind of stuff, meaning staff, uh, they they called them staff, counselors, whatever. Bottom line, they were guards. They were there to guard us and keep us there. There was also violence towards them, against them, and so it become the norm, and it becomes part of your core belief that violence is okay, and actually it's a barrier that you start putting up, that I started to put up, to protect myself from, hey, this is normal, and really it's not normal, especially for a kid. I got out of youth authority, I think I was 15. And I was fighting a lot, man. I turned 16. I went back to youth authority because I got in a fight with some dudes, and I beat their ass. And so I was 16. They were like 19, 20 years old. My friend and I beat the crap out of them. Sent me back to youth authority, and I went to Preston, which was older kids. And then I see guys get stabbed for the first time, right? And so I got older guys there telling me, hey, these guys are 19, 20, 22 years old, 25 years old. The guys are paroling when they turn 25. I was 16, man. And, I paroled I just turned 17 when I paroled. So, yeah, I seen first stabbing in jail, north-south type thing. Riots, racial riots, white and black race riots. Um, participating in stomping guys out. And, you get pat on the back and all that kind of kudos, and it just goes to reinforce the whole mentality that, you don't let anyone fuck with you. You don't let anyone take your shit. You don't let anyone, be a threat to you. If someone's a threat to you, fuck them up. I mean, but what really is a threat to you, and so, I paroled from Preston with that mentality, like, tough guy, fight, if you have to stab somebody, whatever. I mean, that's the mentality that was starting to shape in my head, and the core belief I started to develop at a young age. You don't let anyone fuck with you. You don't put up with no shit. You fight, fight, fight. Defend yourself, And they talk about fight or flight, and flight was not an option, I grew up in a neighborhood that was kind of rough and tumble, lakeside. We had cowboys, bikers, and we had Native Americans from the res. And, the bottom line was, once I got out of Preston, I started riding motorcycles, started looking up to guys in motorcycle clubs, and thinking that's the direction I wanted to go to. Took a few boxing lessons from my co-defendant, who was a boxer. We spent a little time in a karate studio in the back room, boxing, training a little bit. Once again, sharpening up your skills to commit violence. It was all normal now. You see, by this time, at the age of 17, it was normal. Violence was a normal way to solve your problems. If you had a problem with somebody and they were giving you shit and you didn't like it, violence was an acceptable way to solve that problem. At that age, I didn't look back and say, hey, because I grew up in a fucked up house with violence in the home, that's why I'm like this. I mean, you don't know that as you're a kid, man. You're a teenager and you think you're a young man, but really you're still just a kid. And so, and you don't realize that you have protective barriers that you build up around yourself to stop you from thinking, hey, this is not cool, And, then you're sitting, next thing you know, you're sitting in the county jail fighting a murder beef because somebody stabbed somebody, and in what you thought was just going to be a fight, somebody ended up dead. That's when it kind of hit me like, man, what the fuck have I been doing, And for a brief moment, I was in the juvenile tank in the county jail, being tried as an adult. And I thought, man, I'm going to prison. As I've talked about before, my case happened in a bar in front of 10 eyewitnesses. I mean, they saw the whole thing. So I thought, well, I'm going to prison. There's no way around that. So, like I said, just for a brief moment, I'm thinking, there's no use in changing the way I've been behaving now. I'm going to joint, and it's only going to get worse from here, right? And it did. County jail was, wasn't too bad. I mean, people tell horror stories about county jails, but overall, it wasn't too bad. I got in a couple fights here and there, but I think because I was a teenager, 17, fighting a murder beef, a lot of the older cats kind of respected me on all sides, all different races kind of were like, yeah, okay, this kid's all right, whatever. So I didn't really have a lot of racial problems in county jail, or in prison, really, for that matter. A couple incidents, most of the racial incidents happened later towards the end of my term, more so than when I first went in. But because of the violence I seen, growing up in the home and in youth authority and on the streets, it would become a norm. And so I get to the joint. I get a stabbing within 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I got a stabbing. I end up with a shoe term where, excuse me, where I see people going to extremes to commit violence. Like, you see guys with buck knives on the yard in the hole, and you think, man, someone went to some serious effort to get a buck knife in here. It's not just like on the main line. This is in the shoe, when they still had group yards and open tier kind of design, before Pelican Bay or Corcoran or any of that stuff. New Folsom. So, and then you see guys get killed, and the measures they go to protect themselves from getting caught, and the behavior afterwards. The joking, the laughing about this guy who just got murdered. It turns you into a pretty harsh person, a pretty closed off, hard-hearted type person. And for me, I'm not that kind of a guy, and naturally. I'm pretty easygoing, especially now that I'm out here in the world and I've had a little bit of help to recognize, some of the things that I've been through and what the effects of it were. But at the time, you become hard. You harden your heart, towards other people. And, it's not an easy thing to break, man. It's not an easy thing to recognize either, because the guys who are your friends, they got good hearts because you know them and they're your friends. And especially in my case, most of the guys I hung out with were older. They've been through a lot of stuff prior to me getting to prison. Some of them went to prison in 1970, 74, so they've been around some very extreme violence. And so, the mentality is, there's nothing to do except do it, nothing to be afraid of. That's the way life is. You just do it. And so, you live your life like, hey, I have my life, I have my hobbies, my job, my cell, and I'm going to be comfortable. And then if somebody, gets in the way of that, or somebody's a threat to you, then you go commit violence. If somebody fat mouths you, you commit violence. violence was an acceptable way of dealing with problems, even more so in prison than it was on the street. I got to the point on the street, obviously, that violence was acceptable because of my prior experiences in youth authority and in the home. But now I'm in prison, and it's escalating. Um, so my core beliefs were getting like solidified. Like, hey, violence is okay. Violence is, I'm going to protect myself at all costs. But you don't just start protecting yourself by committing the act of violence. I start protecting myself by building up barriers, building up barricades, you know, to do a lot of different things, like to protect people from getting too close to me. And, emotionally, you don't want to get too wrapped up in people in prison because, something could go wrong. And next thing you know, that person's turning on you, or somebody else is telling you, hey, that guy's no good. And next thing you know, he's a victim of violence. And if he is good and he's your partner, then you're going to have to retaliate more. I mean, there's just all kinds of barricades that you got to watch. You got to put up to protect yourself from the shit that goes on in there. And so, and you also want to protect yourself from having to feel, have feelings about the things that you're doing. You don't want to have to feel, the negative thoughts and emotions that are generated from your own act of violence. I mean, when, the things that I did, I had to deal with later on once I kind of woke up. But while you're involved with that life and while you're doing these things, these barricades are not just to keep other people out. It's also to keep your own thoughts and emotions in check, from penetrating into that zone you've created, and your brain function, your cognitive functions, like, hey, this is okay, because really it's not okay. But I've seen murders. But by then, especially later on in my career, I've seen murders. I've seen guys get shot by gun towers. I've seen guys get beat down by police. I've been beat down by police. I've been stabbed. I've been shot with a shotgun. And so, I built up this wall, this barrier, right, to protect myself from having to think about it and having to feel about it. And I did 38 years like that, and of course, towards the end of my term, as an adult, and actually an older adult, older man, I start to, think about, you call it reminiscing or whatever you want to call it, but I started looking back on some of the things I've been through and how it affected me through group functions and just private reflection. And it starts to, the reality of things really start to set in, and you realize, you have PTSD, you have this stress disorder, that will pop up at any given time. It can be triggered by different things. Like I heard guys say, when they got out of prison, they heard a car backfire and, they get on the ground, or because they used to shoot us back in the day. I thought that was bullshit. And for me, it is bullshit. But there are things that can trigger PTSD in guys who've been to prison. And in my case, some of you seen I lost my job because of an incident at work, and here's a guy, people were protesting us doing our jobs. And there's a guy threatening us, saying he's going to smash me, he's going to smash my coworkers, he's going to kill us. I'll kill your fucking ass, and it triggered a response from me, and that's generated from PTSD. The guy was threatening me, so I pulled out my work knife. I carry a knife at work to work, to cut lines and tents and strings and tarps, So I took out my work knife and have enough common sense, enough self-control not to approach the guy. I didn't advance towards him. I looked at him and waited, and I think he peed. I think he knew he bit off more than he could chew by threatening us. But on the other hand, I fucked up. I'm in public. I'm not in prison. But it was a trigger. I have PTSD from all the shit that I suffered. So it was a trigger. It triggered me into a behavior that's unacceptable out here in the world. But for me, in my mind, in this PTSD fucked up world that I live in on occasion, it triggered, right? It triggered that PTSD. I thought, hey, it's perfectly acceptable to pull out my work knife, stand there with it in my hand, and wait and see if this guy's going to follow through with what he's. Because, prison, you live on a yard with 1,000 dudes on a yard, and if you have a problem with somebody, they're not going anywhere unless they lock up. You're going to see them every day at work, on the yard, in the chow hall, visiting room, wherever. You're going to see this person every day. So you either find a way to resolve your problem, or someone gets off on the other guy, or, you find a way to deal with it. Because if somebody tells you in prison they're going to fuck you up, or they're going to stab you, or they're going to hurt you, they do it. They don't wait. They do it because they know they have to live in the same place with you in very close quarters. Even the yard's pretty small. So that's the environment I grew up in. If somebody threatens somebody, they follow through with it. And I told that to when I got interviewed by the police. I said, hey, where I come from, people make threats, they follow through with it. So PTSD is a real deal, man. It's not just for soldiers, and it's not just for ex-convicts. If you grew up in a broken home with violence in the home, if you grew up around drug addicts, if you've used drugs and you hung out with, lived around drug addicts, shared behavior, then there's a good chance that you may have PTSD as well. It's not confined to any certain group of people or any certain lifestyle or any of that. Behavior is, it can affect anyone. So, yeah, that's my PTSD nightmare story that cost me my employment for now. The bottom line is you don't know who you're going to come into contact with in society. And so I don't recommend threatening people. The guy who was standing there threatening us, he had no idea that me and my coworkers, a lot of them have been to prison. And, threatening us is a bad trigger, and he shouldn't have done it. And I'm glad he didn't go any farther with it, because there's no telling what would have happened. People have the right to protect themselves and all that shit, but people don't have the right to threaten people, especially when they have no intent in following through. Why bother threatening someone? I mean, yeah, the whole thing was kind of confusing that day. And it was my first experience with that type of behavior from other people, and it triggered me. And yeah, it's an ugly deal. At least I did have enough self-control to refrain from violent activity. But people out here don't understand what we go through in prison. And what people go through in war. They really don't know. They really don't understand that the guy standing next to them in the grocery store line could be somebody from prison or somebody from combat with PTSD. So it pays to be respectful and polite. It pays. If people are respectful and polite to me, I give it back tenfold. I like to smile, say hi when people, I like to make eye contact. I'm a fairly friendly guy, but when people are a threat to me, and in this case my coworkers as well, it's an ugly trigger, man. So I would just say, there is therapy for it. If you have it from prison or war, and we don't really get a lot of training on how to deal with we have anger management classes and all that, but to recognize PTSD and get therapy for it in prison, it's not something that's done really a lot. I haven't really seen it, but out here there is help. You can get therapy. There's hotlines, especially for veterans. I'm sure there's things through the VA they can go to get help. But as far as ex-convicts, it's kind of like you can talk to the guys around you, but I mean, there's not a lot of maybe your parole officer could send you off. The problem with that is then you get labeled as a nut, so you get that psychiatric jacket hung on you. So a lot of guys don't like to ask for help once they get out here. It's an eye-opening experience for me, and yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about PTSD, and I just want to let people know that prison is a source of some very serious PTSD for people. And you know what? A lot of guys that come out of prison have PTSD from prior experiences prior to prison. So it's a deep-rooted thing, and it can lead you down a terrible road, man. In my case, it cost me 38 years of my life, and I'm glad I'm out here in the world now. But if you've been through some type of PTSD, some experiences that have led you to have PTSD, I'd say get some help. And if you go to therapy, you don't take it lightly. People participate. There's people that do therapy for other people, and that's their job. And a lot of them know what. I don't say all of them. Some of them are dumb shits, but a lot of them know what they're doing. They can identify what you're going through, and they can give you help. So if you go through it, don't take the help lightly. Take it serious, and do it hard, and get a grip on life. Because if you happen to get triggered, you could find yourself in prison doing 38 years. So, and you know what? I don't care if you're 15 or 50. It's a possibility that you have PTSD from some of your past experiences. Get some help. It's a problem. Don't drown yourself in alcohol, drugs, and nefarious activities. Because that's not good either. That just enhances your PTSD. I love you folks. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Do it hard.